He cannot breathe. Chocolate fills his lungs. The mold sealed shut minutes ago, and the liquid inside is hardening, trapping him in a shell shaped like a human child. He tries to scream, but the sugar absorbs the sound. Workers lift the sculpture and carry it away. A chocolate boy, they call it. Perfect for cracking open. They have no idea someone is still alive inside. This scene was written for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Roald Dahl's agent told him to remove it before showing any publisher. "Too uncomfortable," she said. "Change everything. Make it safe." This is the Pandoras project. 3 versions of this story exist. The first draft contains a scene so disturbing that no one would print it. The published edition features details that sparked outrage and forced revisions 9 years later. And the newest version from 2023 has been edited in ways the author explicitly forbade before his death. Each time adults decided what children should see. Each time something true got buried. Tonight we are opening all 3 manuscripts to see what happens when the same story gets rewritten 3 times by 3 generations who thought they knew better. Subscribe so the next sealed text stays visible. Help keep buried truths uncovered. The factory has been remodeled, and what they removed tells you more than what they left behind. Part 1. The Published Deception. The story you know starts with hunger that never stops. Charlie Bucket lives in a tilting shack with 4 grandparents sharing one bed. The family eats cabbage soup every day because that is all they can afford. Once a year, Charlie gets 1 bar of chocolate that he makes last for weeks, and twice daily he walks past the world's largest chocolate factory, close enough to smell it, too poor to enter. The factory belongs to Willy Wonka. He used to employ half the town until rival candy makers sent spies who stole his recipes. So Wonka fired everyone, sealed the gates, and when it reopened, the factory ran on a mysterious workforce no one had ever seen arrive or leave. Then Wonka announces a contest. 5 golden tickets hidden in chocolate bars somewhere in the world. The 5 who find them get a factory tour and lifetime chocolate supply. The world loses its mind. A scientist programs computers to scan hundreds of bars. A woman choosing between her dying husband and a case of Wonka bars asks how long she has to decide. Children everywhere tear through chocolate with desperate hope. The winners emerge one by one. Augustus Gloop, who never stops eating. Veruca Salt, whose father bought thousands of bars and paid workers to unwrap them. Violet Beauregard, who treats the ticket like another trophy. Mike TV, who has watched so much television the real world barely registers. And Charlie, who finds $1 in the snow and discovers the 5th ticket in his second bar. The factory tour becomes Wonders and Consequences, a chocolate river mixed by waterfall. Augustus drinks from it and gets sucked up a pipe to the fudge room. Violet grabs experimental gum and swells into a giant blueberry. Veruca demands a trained squirrel. The animals test her like a nut, decide she is bad, and throw her down a garbage chute. Mike transmits himself by television and emerges 6 inches tall. Their greed eliminates them while Charlie stays humble. At the end, Wonka reveals this was always a test to find an heir worthy of the empire. Charlie wins everything. 2 films adapted this differently. The 1971 version adds an honesty test where Charlie refuses to steal candy even after Wonka betrays him. The 2005 version adds flashbacks showing Wonka's candy obsession comes from a dentist father who forbade all sweets. Both make every punishment fit perfectly and every reward clearly earned. The message is clean. Honesty wins. Greed loses. But this is not what Roald Dahl first tried to publish. The 1964 version that reached bookstores had already been through multiple revisions. Earlier drafts got rejected. His agent told him to change the protagonist completely. What became a beloved classic was already sanitized. And even that version contained images disturbing enough that within 10 years, civil rights organizations would demand he revise again. The factory everyone knows was remodeled before it opened. What was inside the original was far worse than lessons about greed. Part 2. The Original Sin. When Charlie enters the chocolate room in the 1964 first edition, he sees workers so small and so dark-skinned, he mistakes them for chocolate. Wonka calls them Oompa Loompas and explains where they came from with detail that would make everyone panic. They came from Africa. Not a fantasy realm, but the actual continent, from the deepest jungle where Dahl wrote no white man had been before. They lived in trees because the ground was too dangerous, filled with creatures Wonka names with colonial confidence. Hornswogglers, snozwangers, wangdoodles that wanted to eat them. They survived on mashed caterpillars and beetles. The one thing they craved was cocoa beans, but trees were rare. So when Wonka offered a deal, "Come work in my factory for all the cocoa you want," the chief agreed immediately. Dahl insists this was enthusiastic agreement, not coercion. This was rescue. And so Wonka packed more than 3,000 of them into wooden crates, drilled holes so they could breathe, and shipped them across an ocean, where they now lived and worked for cocoa beans, not money. Men wearing deerskins, women in leaves, children running naked. The illustrations showed exactly this: dark-skinned figures in grass skirts, always smiling in service. This was not hidden between lines. It was the actual text parents read at bedtime for nearly a decade. The comparison to slavery was immediate. Human beings in crates, paid in goods, not wages. Removal from home framed as salvation. These were not fantasy elements that happened to echo history. They were echoes so loud you could not miss them. The transatlantic slave trade. American slavery abolished less than a century before, which means children reading in 1964 had grandparents who remembered when it was legal. By 1970, when filmmakers wanted to adapt it, the NAACP had raised enough concerns that everyone panicked. "Change them," they told Dahl. His publishers agreed. In 1973, a revised edition appeared. The Oompa Loompas no longer came from Africa, but from Loompaland, a fictional place. They no longer had dark skin, but rosy white skin, golden hair, bright white teeth. They still wore deerskins and leaves, still got transported in crates, still worked for beans, but no longer African. The 1971 film made them bright orange with green hair, so fantastical no one could connect them to real people. The 2005 film cast Deep Roy, an actor born in Nairobi, to play every Oompa Loompa. So an African actor played workers originally written as African, changed because that was offensive, now returned to screen in what should have been a more conscious era. But even the revised editions were not the beginning. Before Dahl submitted anything to publishers, before Oompa Loompas came from anywhere, there was an earlier draft. And in that version, the protagonist was black. The tour did not end with inheritance. It ended with him trapped in hardening chocolate, unable to breathe, unable to scream, unable to make anyone understand he was still alive. Part 3. The Buried First Draft. In 2017, Roald Dahl's widow Felicity revealed details about the earliest manuscript almost no one knew. Charlie Bucket was written as a black boy. Not ambiguous. Black. When Agent Sheila St. Lawrence read it, she gave advice that changed everything. Making the protagonist black will not appeal to readers. She was not making a moral judgment, but a market assessment. Publishers in the early 1960s would not risk it. If Dahl wanted success, Charlie needed to be white or undefined. So Dahl changed it, removed all mention of race, left descriptions vague. That version reached publishers and still got rejected. The early draft had no golden ticket contest because Wonka already had a wife and son. He was just overwhelmed by children wanting to see his factory, so he let a group tour it. 7 children instead of 5. Augustus, Veruca, Violet, Mike, plus Marvin Prune, Miranda, and possibly someone named Herpes. The tour ended differently. Charlie got separated from the group in the Easter room, where Wonka made chocolate sculptures. A life-sized mold shaped like a boy. Wonka thought it would be fun to show Charlie how it worked from inside, helped him climb in, then got distracted and walked away. The mold closed. Chocolate poured in, hot and liquid, rising fast past his waist, his chest, closing around his throat as the mold sealed above him. When he tried to scream, the chocolate absorbed the sound and turned his voice into something muffled and inhuman that no one could recognize as a child calling for help. The tour ended. Other children went home. Workers prepared the chocolate boy sculpture as a gift for Wonka's son to crack open the next morning. Charlie could only wait inside and hope that when someone broke through, he would still be breathing. That night, burglars broke into the Wonka house. Charlie heard everything from inside his shell. In desperation, he groaned as loud as possible. The distorted sound alerted the family. Burglars got caught. Charlie got freed. As reward, Wonka gave him a chocolate shop where he could finally provide for his family. That was the story Dahl wanted to tell. When Felicity discussed this scene in her BBC interview, she explained what her husband meant. The chocolate mold was a metaphor for racial stereotype. It fit perfectly when Charlie climbed inside, but once hardened it became constricting, suffocating. People outside saw a chocolate boy shape and assumed that was the whole truth. They could not see the real child inside, could not hear him speak. The outer shell determined perception, and the person inside stopped mattering. Dahl understood this from childhood. Son of Norwegian immigrants in British boarding schools, bullied for being different. Students saw his background and treated him as foreign no matter how hard he tried to fit in. Teachers wanted British conformity and punished resistance. Who he was inside made no difference. They saw the shell and decided they knew what was inside. That shaped every protagonist he wrote. Charlie, James, Matilda, vulnerable children trapped in circumstances they did not create, surrounded by adults refusing to see them, waiting for miracles to crack the shell and let them breathe. But publishers did not want a story about a black child trapped in chocolate, did not want racial erasure metaphors. So Dahl rewrote it, made Charlie racially invisible, removed the mold scene, invented the golden ticket contest, made it publishable. And even then, the published version still had African workers in crates paid in beans. It took 10 more years of pressure to force another revision. 2 layers of censorship, 2 compromises. The story was finally safe. Until 2023, when publishers decided even that twice sanitized version was too dangerous. So they revised a 3rd time in ways Dahl had forbidden before death. Part 4. The Modern Erasure. Early 2023. Puffin Books released new editions of every Dahl book with a small notice on the copyright page. This book was written many years ago, and so we regularly review the language to ensure that it can continue to be enjoyed by all today. They had partnered with Inclusive Minds and hired sensitivity readers to examine every book for anything offensive, outdated, or harmful. These readers got full authority to change whatever they wanted. Revisions were not submitted to Dahl's estate first. They were just made. The scale was enormous. Hundreds of changes across every title. Augustus Gloop no longer fat. Mike Teavee no longer carries toy pistols. Charlie no longer thin as a skeleton. Any reference to weight, ism, or appearance got softened or deleted. The Oompa Loompas, already revised twice, got stripped further. The 2023 edition calls them small people. That is the entire description. No skin color, even though it had been changed to rosy white in 1973. No hair. No height. Just small people. Every detail removed. The original called them fantastic with long hair, said they climbed through treetops, called them poor little Oompa Loompas, described one as thin and starved. All deleted. One edit reveals everything. The poor little fellow looking thin and starved was sitting there, became the fellow was sitting there. They removed thin, starved, poor, and little. Kept fellow, the only gendered word. The justification was these descriptions could be harmful. Calling them small might offend short people. Describing them as thin might shame certain body types. Any physical description might perpetuate stereotypes. The result is a blank space where readers fill in comfortable versions. This contradicted Dahl's explicit wishes. In a recorded conversation with painter Francis Bacon, Dahl said if publishers changed a single comma after his death, they would never see another word from him. They ignored it. A spokesman said their principle was maintaining storylines and spirit, called changes small and careful. But removing hundreds of words is not small. And these changes filed down every edge. The timing makes it worse. In 2021, 2 years before the edits, they sold the entire catalog to Netflix for $686 million. While claiming moral authority to edit for sensitivity, they were changing texts by a man who forbade alterations. The edits were not about protecting children. They were about protecting a $686 million investment from controversy. Critics condemned it as censorship, argued Dahl's work deserved preservation as written, flaws included, that children can read difficult material and learn, that removing everything uncomfortable makes stories emptier, not better. Publishers in the US, France, Spain, and Netherlands refused the changes. Puffin quietly started offering both versions, but the principle was violated. 3 versions now exist. Early draft, where a black boy gets trapped and invisible. Published edition, where African workers get shipped and paid in beans. Modern revision, where descriptions get erased for inclusion. Each claims to know what is best. Each generation decided the previous was too dangerous. Each time, something true got sanded away. Part 5. What was lost? 3 factories. 3 locked gates. 3 stories about what adults do to control what children see. The first got rejected because black protagonists would not sell in the 1960s. Probably true as market analysis. But it meant a story about invisible, voiceless children got rewritten to remove the exact identity making the metaphor work. The chocolate mold stayed in Dahl's mind but disappeared from manuscript. The 1964 published version replaced that with different uncomfortable truth. African workers in crates, paid in beans, framed as rescue. Whether or not Dahl intended colonial commentary, the imagery was unmissable. Within 10 years, pressure forced revision. Workers moved to fantasy land. Skin lightened. Humanity abstracted. Easier to dismiss as pure invention, easier to read without questions. The 2023 edition went furthest. Remove thin. Remove starved. Remove small. Delete all physical descriptions. Leave characters as undefined shapes. Readers fill in what feels comfortable. But comfort and truth are not the same. Stories sanded completely smooth stop catching on anything real. Dahl understood being trapped in shells others built and mistook for your actual self. He wrote vulnerable children surrounded by cruelty because he had been one. His protagonists were specific, flawed, struggling, real. The darkness was honest, not softened. Adults in Dahl's stories are neglectful, selfish, sometimes monstrous. They ignore pain. They prioritize comfort. They refuse to see what sits in front of them. Story after story, it takes miracles for children to escape traps adults built. Giant peaches, golden tickets, telekinetic powers, Dahl did not hide his distrust. He trusted children to recognize truth. But revisions assume the opposite, that children cannot handle discomfort, that descriptions are dangerous, that the proper response to outdated ideas is erasure, not conversation. They assume parents need protection from hard discussions, publishers need protection from criticism. Children become afterthoughts. The question is what we lose by continuing to revise darkness out. Dahl's work was imperfect. His original Oompa Loompa imagery caused real harm and revising was right. But there is a difference between authors correcting their own work and corporations editing dead men's words for profit, between addressing genuine harm and removing every rough edge to avoid complaints. Stories are not meant to be comfortable. The best children's literature does not pretend cruelty does not exist. It shows those things, then shows a way through. Shows characters trapped and afraid, then finding courage to break free. Not by pretending danger was never real, but by facing it. When we remove specificity, when we erase everything uncomfortable, we are not protecting children. We teach them discomfort means danger. That hard questions should not be asked. That the correct response to something wrong is looking away. The factory still stands, but every generation remodels it. Repaint walls, remove sharp corners, cover damage, each time insisting this makes it better. But what they are doing is making it easier to ignore what was underneath. 3 versions. 3 decisions about what children know. Every decision made by adults believing they knew best. The question is whether we trust children to see what the factory looked like, uncomfortable truths included, or keep revising until nothing real remains inside. Final part. The breaking seals. 3 factories, 3 versions, each claiming to protect children, but from what? The first never reached print. A black boy suffocating in chocolate, invisible in a shell. His agent said, remove the race, make it safe. The second got published and read for 9 years. African workers in crates, paid in beans. Until the NAACP said, stop. So they moved workers to Fantasyland, lightened skin, made them less specific and less uncomfortable. The third arrived in 2023. Readers removed thin, starved, small. Left shapes with no features. Told readers to imagine whatever feels safest. 3 rounds, each claiming to know what children need. Each certain the previous showed too much. But these revisions were never for children. Children handle darkness. They ask questions adults avoid. They notice when things feel wrong. They learn from uncomfortable truths. What they cannot handle is being lied to, told the sanitized version is all there was, taught that discomfort means danger. Revisions were for adults who could not explain why workers looked enslaved, who could not discuss what it means when black children become invisible in white shells, who wanted to avoid their children asking why stories kept changing. So they smoothed it down, called it protection, built new shells around truth where nobody has to look. Dahl understood shells. He knew what it felt like judged only by outsides. He wrote children in the same trap waiting for someone to crack them open. Every time we revise darkness out, we build that trap again. Make shells thicker, prettier, more comfortable. Convince ourselves we are doing it for children, but they never asked for this. The factory still stands. Remodeled so many times, what is inside no longer matches what was built. And they are not finished. There will be 4th revisions. 5th, each smoother, safer, emptier, until nothing worth seeing remains. Unless we remember, unless we ask why things were removed, unless we trust children to see factories as they were. If this matters to you, leave a like for the record. Subscribe when the next manuscript opens. Comment with which version you read, what you felt, what you think got removed. The question is whether we keep revising until nothing uncomfortable survives, or admit the discomfort was the point. That children deserve truth, even when difficult. That stories with rough edges teach more than stories sanded smooth. See you in the next tomb.